Okay, let's meet our panel. Sarah, when you shared this photograph on the Society's Facebook page, you probably didn't imagine that it'd go viral and reach over 3 million people.
I was honestly blown away by the response that the picture created. I've received probably over 40 messages of people thanking me for sharing my story and letting me know how they can relate. I believe it's easy for us to forget that we aren't in this alone, and I believe the Facebook post was a great reminder of that.
Well, we're all very grateful that you shared that part of your life with us and with all of us. Emily, your story is somewhat similar to mine, right?
Yeah, I was 2 years old when my dad was diagnosed with MS, and then my MS diagnosis came when I was 15, so 4 years ago. And throughout my life, my family, including my parents who have been married for 25 years, and my 3 siblings and I, we've made it a commitment to partake in as many experiences as we can together while we can. And my family's support is the reason that I was able to graduate from high school on time. They were always there for me, even through all the MS challenges that were always brought up. And I'm now a freshman in college, and I'm actually a Society Scholarship recipient.
Thank you, Emily. And Brian, you too are a Society Scholar.
Yes, I'm a college sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania currently, and a MS Society Scholarship recipient as well. But my story is a little bit more recent than Emily's. My mom was recently diagnosed 3 years ago. The anniversary will actually be February 21st, as she was diagnosed February 21st, 2013. I remember the day very vividly because it was the first day where I actually saw my mom with an expression of defeat on her face. I ended up writing up my Common App essay, an MS Society Scholarship essay on it.
Well, that's one of the reasons it's so important that we're sharing today. And Maureen, we all know that you have made multiple sclerosis your life's work, but also know that MS affected you long before you were an adult, right?
That's right. Just as the rest of the team here, my mother had MS, so I have a parent with MS. I've been on staff with the MS Society for 18 years now. I was about 24, 25 when my mom was diagnosed with MS. And my dad, and I have 5 brothers and sisters, were in the home. And so it had a significant impact on our family life at that time. We knew nothing about MS, and this was long before the internet. And so our family actually turned to the MS Society for help. And I remember the days when we used to send videotapes, some of you might know what those are, out to help people learn about MS. And we used brochures and videotapes from the MS Society to begin to learn and understand what MS was. So we have a great debt of gratitude for that.
Emily, you mentioned support, just as Maureen just did. How can family members support each other?
Being open and honest is critical. My mom and dad have always been direct with my siblings and I about the tough facts in terms that we can understand. When I was really young, they taught us that MS was ugly buglies and we had to stomp them out. So with our bike team, we were the pedal monsters and we were always stomping on those ugly buglies. And also, ever since I was about 2 or 3 years old, I could hold a pom-pom in my hand and I was waving at the finish line until every person crossed the finish line. And it really helped to make MS less scary because we were facing it in a positive way as much as we could. With education for all of us, my parents and all of my siblings and I, we spent a lot of time talking about MS. We talk about it at the dinner table, we talk about it around the campfire, we talk about it in the car. Of course, it's not the only thing we talk about, but we do continue to talk about it. My mom brings joy to it, and my dad brings his bad jokes.
Everybody contributes.
Yes.
Now, Brian, your mother's diagnosis with MS is fairly recent, and it sounds as if you've taken on new responsibilities as a result. Has that been hard?
I don't think the difficult aspect is actually assuming the new responsibilities. As the oldest of 3 in a single mother household, I feel as though my entire life I've been taking on new responsibilities. However, the difficult part was actually seeing my mother in a vulnerable and weak position for the first time in my entire life. Because being a single mother, she's always been the strongest person I've ever known. I've always gone to her whenever I wasn't feeling well or wherever I needed strength. And she was in a position where actually I had to help her. So that was difficult for me, and just having to be there for her. That was something foreign to me.
Thank you. Now, Sarah, your mother has had MS your entire life, right?
Correct. My mom was diagnosed with MS about 9 years before I was born. And then about a year after I was born, she was completely confined to a wheelchair. It's funny, I couldn't tell you the moment I realized my mom was disabled. And despite her not being able to walk, I think my parents did an absolutely great job making sure I had a wonderful childhood. My dad's here now, so I promised him I'd be nice about that. I'm just kidding. But we would take many family trips and outings. It just took extra planning on our part to make sure that mom would be comfortable wherever we went.
Thank you. Now, Maureen, you mentioned 6 children, and under any circumstances, that would be difficult for parents. How did your mother's MS affect that family?
It had a great impact, in fact, and it had a financial impact, actually, to a great extent. My mother worked as a secretary at the local high school. My father is a dairy farmer, was a dairy farmer, and so the insurance for our family and a good amount of the income for our family came from that job, that secretarial job. And my mom had a particularly hard course of MS, and she was unable to work after about 3 years. And this threw us into a really rough place, and we were on the brink of bankruptcy. Actually, this was the mid-'80s. And the farm economy was pretty rough anyway. So it was a very hard time for our family. And we nearly lost our farm. And my dad we had an auction, and my dad went to work. But we made it through that. And I realized everyone's experience with MS is different. And in our case, it brought our family together to be closer. And we learned how to work together, and we learned how to support each other. And we became stronger, I think. All 6 of those kids got themselves through college, and we all have a sense of pride about that. And we're all gainfully employed, which I think my parents were proud of. And I think we also learned some things, as I'm sure these children of people with MS learned as well. And that is, you're more comfortable. You don't make assumptions about people with disabilities, because it was really uncomfortable when people made assumptions about your parent with a disability. And I think we all have a sense of pride in how we worked through those issues with our family. And I think we also feel that we can be strong as a family together, even in the face of adversity.
Thank you, Maureen. Now, Emily, something that Maureen said reminded me of something you said. You also are part of a larger family, 4 siblings, and 4 of you. How close you are. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, MS can be a really lonely disease. I know that from personal experience. I've been living with MS for 4 years, but it can also be really lonely for the family. As I said, my dad was diagnosed 13 years before I was, and sometimes it's hard to find people that you can connect with, and the MS Society has been phenomenal for helping to connect with other people, which I'm very thankful for. I really hope that everyone who's affected by MS can find someone who they can connect with, who they can be who they want to be.
Thank you. Now, Brian, given your mother's fairly recent diagnosis, how do you think your perspective has changed?
I think my perspective has changed by acknowledging my mother's perspective, actually, and know that it might have been difficult for me seeing my mother in that position, but that it was much more difficult for my mom to be going through that on herself. But that made me much more appreciative of all the little things in life, such as just family and my mother. And with my mother's diagnosis, all the little downfalls, upsets in life seemed not to be significant anymore. That failed assignment, that defeat here and there. Honestly, I didn't see it as much of a defeat to myself, because I knew at the end of the day that I still had my mother by my side. And my perspective really changed, because I realized, unfortunately, that every day that goes by is actually one less day that I have with my mother. And I have to cherish every one of those moments, every one of those days.
I'm sure your mother feels the same about you. Now, Sarah, since you've been the child of someone living with MS your entire life, how has multiple sclerosis shaped your existence?
I believe it has shaped me in countless ways. It has taught me the true meaning of compassion, and it has also made me very passionate about raising awareness for MS, and it has allowed me to be a voice for my mom and help her fight the battle. I find myself that I'm highly aware of the needs of people with disabilities. Whenever I'm out and I see someone who's using a mobility device, I always try to make sure there's a clear pathway for them or just simply hold the door open for them, because I remember how much those kind gestures meant to us when we would be out with Mom.
Thank you. Now, I know that the five of us could probably sit around for several days and talk about all that we have in common, but there are people out there in the lights who have airplanes to catch. So one final observation from each of you about your experience with your family and multiple sclerosis. Maureen, let's start with you.
Thank you. I would say it's okay to ask for help. And I think for us, reaching out and asking for help, the MS Society reached back. I have many memories of my mom sitting at the kitchen table on our farm talking with someone at the MS Society. And it really mattered, and it made a difference, and it helped us understand the disease and support my mother. And so I think that would be my one message. And to that I'll add, as a child of someone with MS, it's also okay for you to live your own life, to live your own best life. And not to feel guilty about this happening in your family, and to know that your parent wants you to go on and to live and have a successful and joyful life.
Thank you. Now, Emily, let's turn to you. What's your final observation?
Another thing is that MS is an invisible disease. It's not like you have a broken arm and you can wear a cast and people are like, oh, you broke your arm. So often people don't really understand that you have MS, or they don't understand what it's like to have MS. And so I have Oscar here with me. A lot of you guys have met Oscar before. He is Oscar the MS monkey, and he's helping me to spread awareness for MS and especially for pediatric MS. And I just want to end with one last thing. So I've been learning American Sign Language for the last couple of years, and I want to do an activity with everybody. So I want everybody to point to someone across from you, say you, and then you take your thumb and you kind of brush your chin, are not alone.
Alone. Thank you.
Because we are not alone. We are all there for each other.
Brian, final observation.
I was going to say something very similar to that. The past couple of days, I've heard many stories shared from everyone. I thought they were amazing, and I resonated a lot with Eli's words about, the diagnosis of MS creating a feeling of anger. And I felt that when my mom was diagnosed. I felt as though it wasn't fair. Why my mom? She never did anything wrong in her life. But being here, we have to realize that we can't just verify the stigma that is often associated with having a parent or having someone you love with an autoimmune disease, but embrace the MS as a whole entity and realize that it is actually causing all of us to come here as a community. So use it, look on the bright side, be optimistic about it, and realize that it can cause all of us to come together as a community, and it's the reason why we're all here today. So on one hand, I would love my mom to have MS tomorrow, that'd be great. But on the other hand, I'm glad that she does, because I'm here with this great community that is not only supporting her, but supporting our entire family, everyone on this panel, and everyone in this room. So I want to thank everyone for being here today.
Thank you.
Well done.
And Sarah, one final observation.
I have been so touched by the way my mom and others in this community have battled MS with such grace. And I would say just don't ever give up hope. Try your best to stay positive, because I truly believe staying positive is half the battle. And it's amazing what a little bit of positivity can do.
Thank you. Thank you. Tolstoy famously wrote that all happy families are alike. I have never thought that was true. But I do know from meeting my friends here on the stage that all families who manage to cope with the difficulties of multiple sclerosis have so much in common. And I hope that the rest of you who are so touched by multiple sclerosis will continue to share, because I think we can all learn from each other and we're not alone. I'm honored to be here with each one of you, and thanks to each of you for listening to us.
Thank you, Lena. Well done.